Welcome everybody. I'm moving some things around. Let's see. I gotta remember. It's been a while. Trying to remember what I'm supposed to push. There we go. All right. Welcome everybody. This is the Nervous Ghost Press Open Mic episode 6. Lovely ghosts. We're glad to be back. It's been over a month, maybe a month and a half, almost 2 months since our last one. January was a weird month. This month was kind of weird also. I think every month has been all over the place, but we're here. We're excited. Big announcements today. I'm not going to get into them yet. I'll fix these little hearts on my face. There we go. So stay tuned for the big announcements. Very exciting things. I'm excited about it. We hope that you are all happy, healthy, and warm. As always, we hope that you spend time with your friends and family, your loved ones, your unloved ones. Maybe they're just kind of your friends, but you still want to hang out anyways because they just landed on a whole bunch of crypto millions, and you want to be like, hey, remember me? We had lunch that one day at work, and you said I was your best friend, so time to cash in. For those of you who are new, and whether you watch it live or in the future when it's up on YouTube, Nervous Ghost Press, we are dedicated always to the arts, to the artists, and I always believe, and I hope that you can believe one day, that art is our greatest unifier. We can bring people together who would otherwise hate each other, who would want to Homer Simpson, people's throats, and just live in such darkness, but art lets us turn that ugliness into something beautiful. And our biggest announcement today, when I get there, is kind of something that captures that. And my name is Matthew Mejia. I'm the publisher and CEO of Nervous Ghost Press. Remember to connect with us, contact us, email us, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. This is YouTube Nervous Ghost Live. Of course, my email is ghost@nervousghostpress.org. I always reply mostly. Sometimes I forget, but if you reply again, then I'll reply. I'll get back to you. I tell my students the same thing. Email me over and over and over and over because I am getting older, as they say. So, a few things before I begin our show today. We have a tight group. It'll be very nice. We get to listen to each other at our Q&A discussion at the end. There's enough of us where we can really dig deep into why we exist in this space, why we create these spaces, and why art needs to survive longer than us. Hopefully, right? Ghost Dennis is unavailable today. He's working hard, so we want to send him our ghostly vibes and our positive ghostly vibes, and hopefully he'll be here next time. And that's also the other announcement. I want to tell you so bad, but I can't one of these days. Let me check my notes. All right. I have a new mug today to keep with the theme of, there we go, lovely ghosts. There we go. For the other readers in Zoom, they can't see me, but I have these cool, well, you'll see me later. I got these cool little hearts on my head. Just imagine it, I guess, for a little bit. All right, I'm going to open us up, and because of the true nature of these open mics, as always, there are strangers that come on, people we've never met before, and so for the speakers, feel free to introduce yourselves, share anything you like, let us get to know you, let us get to know your work. And so I'll start off, of course. My name is Matthew, and I like poetry, I like writing. I hate reading, I'm going to say it. Reading was difficult for me for many, many years. And every novel I read, I just read one for class, because I have to read it. Can't get the students to read it unless I read it. And I finished, I slammed it down. And I threw the book on the table because I won. And for so many years, I know many people out there, you read a book or you try to read it, tears, we're frustrated, but now I'm bigger than the book. I can beat the book up. And I don't have a poem today, but I do have just a sentence. And this sentence is to try to keep up with the theme, the hearts on my head, the cool love mug, the red pen always. And this sentence says, if everything were a person, it would be you. All right, so I'm introducing the first of our speakers, and I think I can mute myself. We'll figure it out. Jesse.
All right. Well, hello YouTube, and I'm glad to be here for Nervous Ghost Press. So today I'm gonna read a eulogy. This was actually published in the pen name newspaper. In that newspaper, I go by Thomas Till. This eulogy is for a coffee roaster I met in LA. On last Tuesday was the 1 year anniversary of his death. He was killed by Riverside County sheriff deputies. Some people say that he had a mental breakdown, and I believe it because I have seen some Facebook videos prior to his passing where that was the case. But anyways, so eulogy for Mr. Robertson. I learned of your tragic passing 6 days after it happened. The release body cam video was really hard to watch 1 month later. I really thought I would meet you again. Well, I would have liked that. Not that, not watch on YouTube and or the local news. I'll never know your reaction to seeing me again, even though I expect you wouldn't remember who I am. We only met once in LA and spoke about your tattoos and your coffee business in Joshua Tree and rock climbing. I wrote an open letter to you that is now in the pen name after I went to the shop twice in 2020. Your passing took place on President's Day weekend of last year, essentially a few years after I drove out to the shop. Anyway, in the words of Keenan Maynard and my words, you had a lot of nothing to say, but did so much of actions. We'll miss him. Standing above the crowd, you had a heart that was strong and loud. Now, in the words of Ben Kenning and my words, no, you've always held our hearts. You're the kind that no one could replace. Your family knows you love them more than words will ever show. Our once in a lifetime run in is all we have, all I have. To those reading the pen name or listening to this broadcast, take a drive out to Joshua Tree Coffee and do it in memory of a sweet man who roasted coffee that is unique and outstanding. Padlo, who is the editor of the pen name, taught me we're not the people we are on our worst days. We're a culmination of it all, good and bad. And that's that piece. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse. And one thing I want to share. Hold on, I got the hearts on my head and the earphones on my ears, and it's hard to balance it all on my face. But one thing that I wanted to recognize is how I think underappreciated the genre or the style of eulogies, because eulogies allow us as people to really truly connect and represent the other people that we're talking about, those we've lost, those we care about, those we love, those we still love, those we previously loved, and so on. And eulogies kind of let everybody in a way that's very tangible. It's not as, maybe not as poetic, not as out there, not as performative, but yet it's still very powerful and allows us to articulate more deeply who we are and how we feel towards others. And I do agree that it is a culmination of our worst days and our bad days, because we can't always, and this is going to go against every maybe athlete ever and everything I've ever said watching sports and playing sports, but you can't always be champions. Sometimes you just can't, and you have to be on the other end. But when we add it all together and we come together, that's when we are who we are, truly. Thank you, Jesse. One other note, this isn't one of the big announcements. I think I'll share it in a little bit. I'm ready for it. I know everybody else is ready for it. I don't know if you hear it out there, audience people, but every once in a while I hear like a robotic buzz noise. And Brian and Ghost Brian, he can't be here today, but we're working together. He helped me. So I used to have all the software. I downloaded all these virtual cables. You'll notice before now I have cables because I hate downloading things, especially stuff that I don't know. And I would call up Brian, he's our audio engineer, and he would ask me straight up, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "All right, I'm pushing the button." He's like, "What button?" And I'm like, "This one." And it was horrible. So we went out, we got a cool mixer with real buttons, and I don't know what to do. All I know is he said push on, and that's what I'm doing. But every once in a while, if it gets buzzy, it only lasts for a little bit. So just a heads up. One other thing before I introduce the next speaker, as well, first of all, hell yeah, Rams. Just gotta represent the Rams. Sorry, bud, if you don't like the Rams. Anyways, Nervous Ghost Press, and a little bit about us as we're moving forward. We have two books coming out in a few months. We're working on the final designs, the final edits. We'll have a reading tour set up and so on. But we're always open, always available. Email us. Again, I'll put up the information on the screen. Email, contact, add, follow, subscribe, comment, whatever else everybody says with anything. It could be, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. What do you think I should do?" And if I have an answer, I'll do my best to share it. If I know someone who may know better and who probably does know better, I'll point you in their direction. But one thing I always want to be is available to new writers, experienced writers, whatever kind of writer you are. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing, and I knocked on the doors of the offices in my department and I said, "Hi, my name is Matt, and I have no idea what I'm doing." And they said, "Sit your ass down and let's talk." And we did. And if anybody emails me and you say, "I don't know what I'm doing, I want to write poems, I want to write stories, I want to write novels, I don't know how to begin," I'm going to tell you the same thing. Sit your ass down and let's talk. Because art heals us, it saves us, it unifies us, it brings us together, it makes the horrible things, it doesn't make them better, but it makes them palpable, I suppose. And so without that, I'm going to introduce the next reader, and great to meet this person. Never met you before. I hope you're awesome. I bet you are. Carly.
Hi, thank you very much. So I'm going to be sharing a photo today of a grave that I found in New Meadows, Idaho, that said simply Chinese on it. It's actually in a row of other graves that were just like it. But I was on a trip to see one of my oldest friend's parents, and we were going together. We had a really great time just riding ATVs and getting mine stuck instantly, cooking. We went to a farmer's market, and this is up in the panhandle of Idaho, so it's very, very cold well into the year. So even though it was June, they only had one item available. That was leeks because it was the only thing that could be harvested yet. But it came to the last day, and we're all feeling pretty melancholy because, we're adults now. We were both recently married. Didn't know if we'd have another trip like this. As her parents were getting older, I knew she'd have kids soon. So the day already had a bit of a gloom over it. And we went down the road, and there's a little farm, and we could see from fairly far off there was a sheep that was bleeding out of its hindquarters, and we couldn't tell if it was giving birth or if it was actually injured. I think it was the latter, but we kind of started back and forth and couldn't really make it out until we finally gave up. And we just went into the cemetery right there called the Meadows Valley Cemetery. And as we were going around, we had that really high latitude light, so it gave it a really gorgeous, warm glow. But of course, I always take it really seriously being in a cemetery. Even though these went back to the early 1800s, it's actually still in use, and there are still burials up to today. So when we got to the last corner and I saw this one, I assumed that I knew what it was from. I assumed, if you know anything about American history, you probably know that many Chinese people worked on railroads, didn't get much respect, didn't get much inclusion, and I just always assumed that was what this was from. But I did a little bit more research to see if I could find anything about these specific people. And I did find that many people came to the West Coast into Idaho after California had its gold rush. And they actually came mainly from one province around 1848 called Guangdong. And they came to work on railroads or to mine or to work at fish canneries. And of course, they often, when they would go to mines, would have to, go to the places that white settlers had already really cleaned out, and they'd be getting the last remnants. Um, and I didn't find any evidence of a mine or fish cannery anywhere near New Meadows. But I did find that in 1911 there was a depot. The train came through, and there was a depot built as the train tracks were laid. And it was actually about a mile away from the original town of Meadows. It's not because that was going to be the center of everything now, everything traveling through and all the industry. They just moved the town about a mile to where the depot was. And so I assume that that is the story of this particular person. But in my research, I found that there was actually a place that we'd visited a couple of hours north. And that was called Warren. And it was basically a ghost town, but there is still a little bit of life there, a little bit of mining, and a few people that live there. But it's basically a tourist attraction. It doesn't open until July 4th. So we were about a week early because it's so cold and snowy still. But they actually voted early on to allow Chinese people to come and live equally and have the right to buy land to mine or to lease land that they could mine on. And it became so popular that the Chinese people actually became the dominant ethnic group there. And so they actually outnumbered all the other ethnic groups combined. And so they really lived with a lot of the traditions that were lost in other places. So from 1870 to 1920, they had their cemetery up on a hill, and it was for Chinese people only. And so they continued a lot of their rituals that revolved around death, including feeding the dead. So there were several ceremonies over those decades where they would do a big barbecue, chicken and hogs, and they would donate some of that to the grounds. They'd light joss sticks, big incense sticks. They had confetti that had little pieces with little holes in it. And it was believed that by putting that on there, it would be hard for evil spirits to get through those holes and into that person. They'd pour some whiskey on the ground. And one of their big rituals was actually to exhume the people after a while and send their bones back to China. And so they would exhume them. They'd actually have people who were paid to do that, and they would boil them before they would send them back. But there was a man named Frank Schiffer who was a witness and actually watched it one time, climbed up there and watched them uncover someone who hadn't yet decomposed. And they found she was a woman and covered her back up and reburied her. So it turned out that wasn't actually just because they wanted to honor her or because she wasn't decomposed yet, but actually the women didn't have the same rights. So they would ship the men back, but they weren't paid to exhume the women. And so they just covered her back up. And she and two other women, one of them named Chuhei, are believed to probably still be the last bodies that are still in that cemetery. Similarly, there is a massacre site that's really remote in Hell's Canyon, very hard to get to. The Bliss Rodeo Grounds has a site with 6 crosses and a little cemetery there. That was known to be section hands on a railroad. There was a dynamite explosion, though, that killed all of them, so they buried them. And I hope that since there are 6 crosses, that means there are 6 people, but I don't know if there might have been more. And that was in 1883. So I still don't know what happened to this person, but I do know that nobody ever found out their name. Yeah.
Thank you, Carly. I was writing down. I always have my notes over here. Sometimes I don't know. You can see it. Sometimes you can see it. Sometimes you could hear it. But as far as photographs and art, and one thing that I've been learning about and I've been trying to get more into is the stories behind it and the history, because it may just be a poem, it may just be a photograph, it may just be something in the ground somewhere, but there's so much history and things that we can learn today that can help us grow, help us come together, and so on. And so I want to see what other photographs you have too. That'd be awesome. Thank you, Carly. All right, I'm gonna turn off everybody else so you focus on me for a little bit. Okay, so, and that buzz, you can hear the buzz now, right, everybody? Anyway, I could hear it. So I'll start off with a small announcement. The smallest announcement is this may be our last virtual open mic, and we might be moving to a in-person venue, outdoor venue open mic. Enough seating to separate ourselves if needed, and so on. We have the new machine, and everything else. It'll still be once a month, but it might be during a weekday, trying to figure out the schedule. And in person, we can all say hi to each other, still be streamed to YouTube no matter what. If but that's exciting because I don't think we've had an open mic in person yet. It's kind of nervous, but it'll be nice. That's the first announcement. The second announcement, the bigger announcement, is that Ghost Dennis and I, have been working on a new annual anthology literary journal by us called The Waiting Room. And today is the first official announcement that submissions are open, and we are accepting poetry, prose, anything but translation, unless you wrote it in both languages. If you wrote it in Spanish and then you wanted to translate it in English, awesome. If you want to just submit it in Spanish, go ahead. If you want to submit it in Japanese, Chinese, or any other language, that's cool too, as long as it's your work. But submissions are open, submissions are free, no matter what, forever. That is our nonprofit Nervous Ghost Entity Inc. Did I say promise already? Promise forever, zero reading fees, moving forward on anything we have, any prizes, any submissions. If you submit work, it costs $0 to you, no matter what. And you can submit at www.nervousghostpress.org. Again, I'll throw it up on the screen. On the home page, there is a learn more button, a check it out button, and you click on that one, it goes to the waiting room. It gives you a quick rundown of what it's about, submission guidelines, anything else. If you have any questions at all, email me. And if you want to email the Dennis, our editor, that is editor@nervousghostpress.org. But you can email us anytime, send us a message on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. And so we're very excited. This journal is going to be amazing. I want big things. It's going to be super cool. Very quickly, what it is it's the waiting room. And sometimes we wait. We wait for our numbers to be called. We wait for our opportunities to be seen. We wait for the moment to speak. We're raising our hand, but they don't call on us. We're waiting for the light to turn green. We're waiting for all of these things. And this journal is our opportunity to call the number, to call on you, to turn green, to open the door, to take that step forward, to take that leap, to take the bite of the food you've been wanting to try but you never did, to do your first push-up, your first pull-up, your half set, whatever. And so submit your work. It's open. We'll be announcing more on our social medias and so on. But we're very excited. And so now I'll introduce our final speaker of the evening before we jump into our open discussion with all of us, all 4 of us, 5 of us. If you have any questions you'd like to put in the chat, send them. If you want to email me a question, email a question. But Marcus, whenever you're ready, I'm going to turn on the camera here. It's all you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate it. It's good to meet all of you guys. And it sounds like we're kind of working towards a theme. I don't know that we had a theme ahead of time, but Jesse started with a eulogy, and then Carly shared a grave site with history and research that she did, which I thought was thoughtful. And this is, I don't think it's a real coincidence, but kind of works along that theme, even though it was kind of undiscussed ahead of time, which is kind of cool. So I wrote a poem, and if you don't like it, you can blame it on the fact that I wrote it at 4 a.m, but it's called The Mariner's Compass. And if you guys can hear me all right, just give me a thumbs up. All right. Okay. The Mariner's Compass. The Mariner's Compass was sold without guarantee. Though its function seemed sound, it was off 1 degree. The salesman explained every feature, but never the flaw. And with no guarantee, he was safe from the law. On the following night, that poor mariner set sail, never knowing his plans were all destined to fail. The ship traveled off course well into the night. He was making good time in a way that seemed right. But after 3 days at sea, he searched for dry land, and as there was none, he took his compass in hand. This device must be broken, oh woe is my soul. Now returning home safely is outside my control. He sailed ahead each direction and then in reverse, But without proper guidance, he only made matters worse. Soon as rations were spent, then shortly after his life, he left two children behind and a sad, lonely wife. Now, dear friend, I ask you, where did this mariner go wrong? Was it carelessness, poor planning, or that he took no one along? Was it the salesman or the compass that led him astray? None of these or all of these. How was this man betrayed? I'll share with you in brief the truth this story brings. A man's heart is deceitful above all other things. The fool that trusts in it or puts their faith in man has failed to count the cost and is built upon the sand. You declare within yourselves, this is not the case with me. I'm not holding any compass, neither am I lost at sea. But is it not true that every one must surely die? And since that is the case, do you know the reason why? Everyone is on a present path that leads to life or death. Do you know where you will be when you take your final breath? Is the compass that you're holding just as the one discussed? If every man is lied, where shall we place our trust? Is there a ship that never sinks and a guide that never fails? Is there a wind so sure and strong that it puts heaven in our sails? Yes, my friends, there is. You don't have to live in strife. He declared that he alone is the way, the truth, the life. And all that trust and love him will follow his commands, the first of which is to believe with open hearts and hands. He can forgive you all your debts, for that price was fully paid. You can live and breathe in freedom, and you needn't be afraid. So take his abiding word and journey sweetly through the pages. Cast away your broken compass and embrace the rock of ages. That's it. Thank you very much for listening to that. Again, if you didn't like it, 4 in the morning, you can blame it on poor timing. I was driving this morning on Trader Joe's. What's that, Matt? Did you say something?
No, not me.
Okay, it was in
Yeah,
the background.
it was
Okay,
that,
so
that buzz.
yeah, so I was driving this morning to Trader Joe's to pick up some like much needed cool salads from there. They're really good. And apparently, I did something wrong while I was driving. At least that was the impression of the driver behind me. So she stopped to beep to turn back while in motion to give me like a signal with her hand. And you know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is worth about two or three. So I was like, wow, everyone is seeking, whether knowingly or not, to leave a signature in this world or to be heard, like Matthew said. And there's a legacy that we leave behind, whether it's on a shallow grave or an unmarked grave, or maybe someone speaking on our behalf. But I think it's a healthy thing and actually a good thing for us to think about our life and where it's headed and what direction we're headed and what signature will we leave on this life. Will it be our own, or is it going to be on someone else's behalf? So if you guys, understood the poem or saw, I violated probably every rule of poetry because didn't Emily Dickinson say that tell the truth but tell it slant? But I was basically straightforward and I was sharing scriptures from the Bible. So total plagiarism. It's a Christian poem if you didn't catch that. Did you guys catch that? Yeah, kind of. No? Okay, well, there's several quotes from the Bible in there. So do you guys know who I was talking about, like in terms of following? Yes? Okay, great. Awesome. Well, let me ask you one last question. If I have the time, Matt, I want to be respectful. Yes? If he's giving me a thumbs up, I can't see it.
Yes,
I see a
I
ghost.
forgot. You can't see me. Yes.
Okay. All right. Really quickly. So let me just ask you a hypothetical question. All right. Totally hypothetical. This is a virtual meeting, but let's say that we were all in the same building, right? Like pretty tall building at that. And in rushed a fireman and he said, "Hey, you may not be able to see it, but the building is on fire. Like, and you have to follow me, like right now, if you want to save your life. And there's only one path that leads to safety. All the rest are blocked in flames. I can't run really fast. Bought a beach cruiser and near died just going around the block. I'm not in the best shape, but I bet we would all run out of there, and you guys would probably beat me out. I don't think any one of us would say, not today, or I'm going to find my own way out, or I agree with what you said, but I'm going to stand still instead, right? When I ask that question, people are like, well, yeah, I'd run out of there. Yeah, I'd follow this guy if the fireman asked me out. If you guys agree with that and it's not a trick question, can you give me another thumbs up? Yeah, if you're listening, kind of virtual thumbs up. Okay, good. All right, well, that's kind of the essence of the poem that I wrote. So it was Jesus that said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father except through me. So, I mean, if we would trust a fireman with our physical life, we should trust him with our spiritual life because that lasts a lot longer. And so when we ask questions in logic, uh, especially those that are hinged upon our physical well being, they generally end in the same way. Like, well, yeah, I would do that. Yeah, I'd throw that overboard. Yeah, I would give that up if it meant my life. So that's why I'm kind of like asking these questions intentionally and why I wrote this poem. It's because I have love for you, though I never met you before in my life. Jesse and I go way back, about a month back when I reached out to him. So I got love for you guys. I share the same message at the Men's Central Jail in Los Angeles, which is the largest jail in the world, actually. It holds about 6,000 men. And so I'm part of a team that goes out and talks to these men that are in a very dark place and I let them know that, folks have love for them still and want to talk to them and investigate the issues in their life and talk to them about some of the things that I talked to you guys about today, but of course in love and respect to our fellow man. So thank you again for the time. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Definitely, thank you, Marcus. And some things I wrote in my notes is philosophy, and I tell my students every day we're philosophers. I don't know if they get annoyed by it yet. They hear it in class, they hear it now. If they're watching, they better watch, right? Of course. But we're philosophers where we always ask questions and we always ponder and wonder and get closer and closer and closer to something, whether or not it's the answer we want. It's still an answer. It could be the answer we needed that we didn't even know we needed. And I wrote down love and I put a square on it. I don't know. I'll show you. Check this out. See? Put a square on it. And one thing I always, and I'll get into our Q&A in a little bit. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure we could have some fantastic discussions today with Carly and Jesse joining us and everybody. And it's always the what if. I want to be the greatest guitar player ever. But what if I'm not? And maybe one day, what if we told ourselves, what if I was? And what if the good thing happened instead of us thinking, what if the negative thing happened? And let me move myself. I need to turn off myself on this screen. Hold on. And then I'll get us all together for our Q&A. So if you have a question, anybody out there, text it, type it. I'm almost, here we go, 1 second, Q&A. I have a lot of different screens. Let me get us here. Gallery. I'm gonna narrate so it doesn't look like I'm just saying things by myself. And then no, that's my ghost. Where is it? There we go. All right, so we're all here together. You could all see me now, except for everybody, for Jesse, for Carly, and Marcus. I'm gonna be looking, I think, sideways, maybe. I don't know, because you're over there, but I'm looking over here. It's so confusing. But the first question I have, and of course, when I say Q&A, it's really a discussion between all of us. And you could answer it, you can ask your own questions, we can really get into art, we can be together here. It's not often that we get to communicate artist to artist, writer to writer, photographer to photographer, for the people, as opposed to question and very political, robotic response. This way we can be us and all the dirt, the ugliness, and so on. But my first question is, when we're creating, if you're taking a photograph of something. If you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep. Something is just drilling itself into your mind, and you have to pick up a pen. You have to get it out. Otherwise, you just know you're not going to sleep. And you have to snap this photo. You have to put the first brush stroke down. You have to put the note. You have to do something. But there's also something else that's telling you no, don't do it. How do you, as the creator, the artist, the writer, the photographer, how do you fight against that thing in your head that says no and you do it anyways?
I know for me, there are always a lot of just pressures of daily life, things going on that make it so that it seems very exhausting to start a big project. I want to make sure that I have time to do it properly. And I always just remind myself of how making art just takes me away, and it takes me to a completely different place, gets me away from the worries of the world, and like fully engages me after, what used to be an hour, I'd say it's even less time than that these days. And how I can fully immerse myself in it. And there's nothing as satisfying, nothing that's as fulfilling as that. And it's so important to leave your mark on the world and to say that thing that's important. It's more important than anything else that we have going on. And so there's always that hurdle of activation energy, where it takes a lot of energy to get yourself started and past whatever else is happening, but it's so worth it, and it makes your life so much richer.
I would like to say to the question that actually did happen, where something was telling me no, but I just ignored it anyways. So I was actually at a yoga studio recently, and I was thinking about what one of my friends told me. And and for me, it's still, I'm processing it to like, it's like, how do you go from Christianity to Catholicism? You know what I mean? Because I've seen many times where people are going from Catholicism to Christianity. So, and I didn't know whether to write about it or not, because that's that person's experience. That's what he is going through. But I wrote about it anyways, because I wrote about it in terms of like two terms: rebirth and resurrender. And give me one moment here. It looks like we have oh my gosh, a flower song. What? Hey Matt, good to see you again. Macedio.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Okay. There you go. How's it going?
For me?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, Jesse?
Good. Do you want to read some stuff and then jump onto a question that Matt will ask again?
Sure,
Matt,
I'll do something. Let me. Hey, this is a new one. This is this is not even. I got a new book out to you on the second floor, but this is going to be from the book after that I'm working on already. I stay working. So here we go. This one's called Three Kings. This poem is based on a true story, partially. Some of the rest, well, the rest up to us. So let's begin out there. We're out of the interstate. Through valley and canyon, where dynamite long goes split the mountain. Our big rigs carry big business, blood money with even bigger interest. Blood in the highway, blood in the roots, connect field to factory. Desert to metropolis, eyes, ears, mouths to market. Our every day without complaint with single file 46 lanes, tooth and nail, hammer at the hip, all ready to pin our sweats. The economy out here, we swallow our tears in this concrete field of dead and dreams. Who I call a vision of three kings, laughing triumphant, majestic in crisis, one at the wheel, one at the hood, one waving the shirt off his back, that red and black checkered flag with no time to wait on CHP, AAA, or Caltrans badges. We don't need no stinking badges. I saw three Mexicans in the middle freeway during midday traffic, and I imagined the troubled roads, the vulture skies, the hardened past, the hardened hands. In these troubled times, the sun, the sand, the heat, the tar, the gravel, these proud men must travel, make possible this roadside miracle, that smog-fueled parable, three kings with rolled up sleeves, facing the road together. Out on the edge forever. On expressway to nowhere where billboards stretch as far as the eye can see. Selling the promise and the dream, the plot and the threat, the best laid plans of mice and men of sweat and strain like rats in a maze out here where every day we show our teeth. We sharpen our glare and hiss at the oncoming traffic and out the windshield. In the distance, I could see it. A grand mirage arising in place of horizon. Bloodshot and gridlock. Spellbound and hellbent, the people, just look at them, all fucked up and paved in plastic, right to left, east to west, into certain death, into the gaping jaws of the highway. They just kept driving into 9 to 5s that ate them alive. Graveyard shifts tore life from limb into the belly of the beast, the feast of the very cannibals that feed on our blood, our sweat, our tears, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our cowardice, our compliance. That's true crime. The real tragedy. What are we so scared of? We're dead already. On the disc, I could hear the men singing a song of redemption and resistance, revised for our purpose, a true story. It was something like this: we three kings have traveled this far, carrying this economy in our strong arms, through fields and canyons, mines and mountains. Now get in the fucking car. And I could hear us on that proud day joining chorus and verse. When the tables finally turn, when the first shall be last, the last shall be first. Hands of struggle, hands of might. It's the working hands that make the cities bright. It's the means we're seizing, still proceeding. Now guide us in that righteous fight. We set fire to the highway. Reduce billboards to ash. Pull the rich from their beds. Tore their slumber from their sheets. Press their face to fields of cold concrete. And I could swear by the troubled road, I could hear them cry. I could hear them scream. As we took back all they had stolen, all of their lives. And it was right. And it was just. And this poem is based on a true story. Possibly. The rest will rest up to us. And that's that.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you for hopping in. Thank you for joining us. You know, one thing I wrote down here is we don't need no stinking badges. Promise of the dream. Three kings rolled up sleeves. And you know what? One thing, and we spoke about this a little bit while you were on your way, and it's about, I think Carly said, our signature in the world. Marcus said something similar, and it's the legacies. The legacies that we leave behind, not just in the memories and who we are, who we speak to, how we can have such an impact on somebody in just a small little instance of meeting someone, a conversation, a wave, of something that means nothing to so many people could mean something to so many others. And it's so cool how we can do it with our words, our emotions, how we can put it all together, a snapshot of something. Jesse, you were speaking before. Go ahead and finish, and then we'll think of some new questions, and we'll get this conversation even more rolling.
Okay, so the question you asked us earlier was about, like, you want to write something, but something's telling you not to do it, but you do it anyway. So how do we go about that? So as I was saying, for me, is that I just did it anyway, and the way I was able to do it is to apply two terms, rebirth and resurrender. And I actually want to hear what Marcus has to say about rebirth and resurrender, because I know he might know a lot about that in terms of what he discussed in his poem and the logic questions he was asking us.
Yeah, sure. First of all, you asked a question specific to the topic, Catholicism versus Christianity, and the conversion from one to another. And I think a good place that I would recommend to start without doing like about 1,500 years worth of reading would probably be to study hermeneutics. So hermeneutics is the principles by which and it's really with any writing, by which you interpret, those principles that you apply to the text to interpret the meaning. So the intent of the author is the intended meaning. It's not subjective. It's not a question, especially from a biblical standpoint. What does this mean to me? I'd rather know what it means. And so I'll give you a quick illustration. Like, let's say we're all enlisted in the same army. We're all in the same army, and there's a captain that's going to explain to us, hey, you're getting ready to enter into enemy territory. This is a wartime situation. And I'm going to explain to you the geography. I'm going to explain to you the weaponry that they use. I'm going to explain to you their tactics, how to identify them. I'm further going to explain your weaponry, how to use it, and the fact that you need to follow me very closely if you want to make it out alive. So every soldier enlisted in that army, including us, would be wise to listen very intently to what that captain had to say. If we said, I'm just going to take that with a big grain of salt. Or, you know what, like, no, that's not important. I got this. Like, then that's going to be a very dangerous thing to employ before battle. So when we're studying hermeneutics, and when we're applying that to the Bible, we actually do want to know what God has said through the pages of those scriptures, because if we walk away with the wrong meaning, we could be off course. And the idea behind the poem again is that if you turn a ship or a vessel off course, even by 1 degree, you're not going to really notice it at first. But give it about 5 years, you're going to be like way out there. And you can't afford to be way out there in your theology. So that's important. The other thing is, why do we do the things that we do, whether we're into oratory or whether we're writers, and whether we want to publish something on somebody's windshield or in a book or whatever. And what's the motivation behind it is a good question. So why am I doing it? Well, in the Christian sense, again, I believe we're under orders. It's the essence of Matthew chapter 28, the Great Commission, that we're to go out and lovingly share this message with other people. So I was on yard sales today, which if you're not into that, I forgive you, but it's really cool. You should start, because there's some really good deals out there. But anyway, I'm like going looking for yard sales, and like no one is having a yard sale, and I'm like super bummed out about it. But I go to this yard sale, and I think it said big yard sale, and which was a lie because they had like 5 things there. And anyway, I go there, and I have the poem in my back pocket, and I'm getting ready to hand this out. And I don't speak Spanish, and they do, and I can tell. And they're it's a Latin American household. So I'm like, should I give them my poem? Like, are they going to know what are they going to be able to interpret that or read that? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I walk away with it, and then I get in my car, and I'm like, wait a minute, this family has value. I don't know them. I may never see them again, but they have worth, and I want to go back there. So I went there. I had a Spanish Bible in the back of my car, and I had a Spanish Bible tract, and I put them in there and walked back in there. And they probably weren't expecting someone to give them something at a yard sale, but I said, "Hey, a gift for you," and I handed it to them. So the motivation is this, succinctly, quickly. If you see a blind person, and they're deaf as well, they're walking towards danger, they're headed towards, like, let's say the edge of a cliff, and you're like, gosh, how am I going to talk to them? Like, they're not going to hear me, they're not going to see me. If I grab them, they're going to be freaked out. So how am I going to communicate to them? I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need a lot of help with this conversation, but I care about them, so I'm going to try. And so we pray before we go out, because the Bible explains in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1, that before Christians come to Christ, they are dead in their sins. And you can take the gospel message to a cemetery, and you'll have as much luck or success getting someone to raise up out of that grave and listen to you than you will someone that's unwilling to listen, that doesn't understand the things of God. So it's hard, it's difficult, it's even impossible for a man to convince another man of the things of God. So we show up lovingly, kindly, and we explain what that message means. And if I could give you one single verse to dwell on and hone in on, it explains well God's omnipresence. So that means he is everywhere, always, all at the same time. And if you like astronomy, like, I think the observable universe is 10 billion light years across. Takes 1 second to say that. 10 billion light years across, but the speed of light travels at 186,000 miles per second. So even the closest star to us, 5 light years away, let's say, you will have to count 1, 2, 3 for 5 years. And that's how far that star away is. And every time you count 1 second, 186,000 miles have passed. That's the closest, but the observable universe, 10 billion light years across, and God's everywhere there. He's everywhere in physical space as well as what we call the heavenlies in heaven. It says in Isaiah that he inhabits eternity. So he's also not bound by time. So when you think of like, does God knows what's going to happen in the future? Yeah, he sure does, because he's already there. He's not bound by time at all. So when you start to even imagine just one attribute of God, you feel dwarfed. You feel so small. And you're like, wow, like he is so large. And what does he want of me? Like, it begs the next question. And I tell you, here's the thing, guys. Like, I thought I was a Christian before I was. I had no clue what a Christian was until I was willing to give my life to God and repent of my lifestyle and my hideous, sinful lifestyle and alcoholism and other things I'd rather not mention. But I gave my life to the Lord and I started reading the Bible. I'm like, what is this? I had no clue. No clue what was in there and I'm still reading it. And it's beautiful though. It's great. I think Matt actually quoted the last will be first and the first will be last. Christ said that. And he said that in terms of motivation. Why do you share? How should you share? The greatest amongst us will be the servant of all, the one that doesn't want to elevate self, but elevate others. I think one of the greatest poems that I've ever read was Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Anonymous, that he didn't care to have his name published. He didn't care to be known. He just wanted to share that message. And when I share, my name's unimportant. I want to share and point to someone else that's a lot more important than me for the sake of that person. Other than that, I don't have any opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marcus. And the biggest thing that I took from what you said here, and then I'm gonna get a little controversial a little bit, and I love controversy. We'll all learn that about me. Soon. Maybe one day. Anyways, is you said motivation, and I wrote down intent. And the reason why I did that is because when I'm working with my students or myself, when I'm trying to write something, and for many years I didn't speak, I didn't read, I did nothing of the sort. I didn't go out in public. Tears everywhere. But now it's the intent and the why. And that's why I said philosophy and philosophers earlier is every word I put down on a paper, every photograph that I look at, everything I take a picture of the sky and send it to my former professor every single day. It's like the coolest thing we've been doing for almost 2 years. It's really neat. But when I do it, there's an intent, and it has to have this part of the tree and the sky, or this word has to sound this way, and this meaning has to mean something. I'm not wasting the words because now I can say the words. And for many people who are either non-religious or different religious, this idea of faith, I was very religious and very faithful up until a couple years ago. And what changed was I used to believe or whatever was in the outside and the beyond and the bigger. And what changed is now I am more into the this and the me and so on. And yet I still recognize that we still believe in something bigger. And what I believe, whether it's religion or not, it's still something bigger. It's those who came before me and those who will come after me. And what I've been stuck on recently, and I've been trying to put this into my writing so we stay focused and everything, is really where are we from, but not so much where but whom, and the lives that they had, and that I am their legacy and my brothers are their legacy, and we survive today because they didn't, or because they struggled and they fought for something beautiful, and it's us, and it's me, and it's Carly, and it's Jesse, and Matt, and it's Marcus, and it's all of us, for everything that happened before and everything that's gonna happen and that will happen, and we're part of it, and we're making things perfect. I mean, if we didn't exist, I don't think the world would be cool. Really, if it comes down to that. The other thing you brought up, bound by time, and I think as far as time travel, I really like time travel movies, and maybe Jesse or Carly, I don't know if you like time travel movies. They confuse me, but it's so cool anyways. In our brains, and sometimes I think about this when I'm writing something, we are in that moment over and over and over and over. We were also in that movement 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and yet it's right now at the same time, as it's not even a memory, it's a future thought of what could happen, but it's already happened, and it trips me up. But the next question I have is regarding that is how do you, and maybe Carly, whoever hasn't spoken a lot, if you want, of course, we're not going to bully anybody unless you want to be bullied, then Jesse will bully you. But is when you have a memory of something that happened, a memory happened years ago, years and years ago, and yet you wake up every day and it's fresh, always. When you write it down, when you create something, when you paint, when you take a picture of it, when you capture that moment that had already happened, but you're capturing it now, what is that process like? And does it change with every year or every month or every day?
I hope I'm not being a bully. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I hope I'm not being a bully here, but I would like to hear Matt answer that question. Sadio.
Gotta unmute yourself there, Matt.
Unmute. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Hey, so actually years ago, I actually did see these guys in the middle of the freeway, fixing their car, and I thought about that, and I thought, what's the most like weird take I could have on this? And I was like, well, these guys fixing their car are encouraging us to seize the production. And I thought that was a really kind of odd take on that. I was trying to figure out how do I work my way there, but that's partially and that was the one small part that actually happened. But yeah, I was just trying to work my way into that, just kind of take that process of that moment and then put it through kind of a 3-act structure, put it through a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, where like world build, have an inciting incident, and then having all these conclusions about these incidents, and then have the rising action tied back to the world build, and then finally culminate in this inevitable conflict that emerged pretty naturally from the combination of the inciting incident and the world build. So that's how I wrote Three Kings.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Carly, I know you have things in your mind. Share everything in your head.
I actually really started. I mostly do landscape painting and a lot of landscape photography, and I started because I'm always going out and exploring new places. I love to do that and really embed myself in the culture and the history and the science of the place. But I always found myself wanting to share those places with other people, usually with my husband. If he wasn't there, I would just think, oh, I want to be able to capture this. And it's been a really great tool to try to capture the feeling of a place and learn about the difference between what's physically in front of you and how to make it feel the same way. And it's also been a really great way for me. I always go hiking and jogging, but you can only do that so many miles a day. And I was getting just to the point where, I couldn't hike any further. And so it's been really great for me to be able to go out and paint on site and do plein air paintings, and really embed myself in that situation and start to notice and feel different things about it than I've been able to in the other ways that I've interacted with it before. So, I love the idea of being outside of time, being in that fourth or fifth dimension, and having everything that's ever happened always happening and always there. And I think, that's something that gives me a lot of hope, but also a lot of terror that you really have to live your life in the best way possible because the past is not gone. It's, still having resonance. It's still hurting people or helping people. So you better make sure that it's making other people happy. And so I hope that's something I can do with my artwork.
Totally. And I have a quick follow up. So landscape painting, awesome. And I think I went hiking twice back in the day. I got to do it more. It's fun, but also, I don't know, it kind of freaks me out. But anyways, the thing I wanted, the follow-up question is, you brought up nature and outside. And so I think the question I have is, how do you bring the outside inside and yet still have the energy and the passion and everything of being outside.
So to get the physical images, that's where photography comes in a lot for me. It's interesting because I photograph things so that I can paint them, but I also find that if something is a really great photograph, it's not going to be a great painting. And if it's a great painting, it's probably not a great photograph. So that's been interesting to see that. But basically, it's very hard for me to bring myself inside at any point. I always want to be outside, be a part of what's going on. I don't want to miss out on anything. And if it's sunny out, I'm probably outside somewhere. And so that's another way for me to continue that during the day. I do a lot of reading about all the places that I go, but I find that I can really only do that when I'm in a place or just after coming home from there. And so I'm really able to extend that visit and extend that experience by coming home and painting it as well.
That's actually that's really interesting that a painting is not going to be a photograph and a photograph is not going to be a painting. And I know one thing I learned about photography is I met a photographer once, and I saw those pictures, and I was like, dang, these are awesome. And one big thing I've noticed is when I've taken the pictures of the sky and I see the moon, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take a picture of the moon. It's gonna be super cool. My professor's gonna love it. And I take it, and then the moon is like,
Yeah.
a little tiny. I'm like, oh, this sucks.
Either the only thing exposed or just a super bright light.
Yeah, and it's so strange, but I I have this feeling, and maybe this could be the next question. Also, is and this could be Marcus, Jesse, when we see something in nature, in the physical world, in our heads, and so on, and we want to capture it the same way we paint it, the same way we take a photo of it, but we can't paint and we suck at taking pictures, but we have one of these things and we like writing words. How do we then capture that natural image, that very tangible moment with words to to make it almost perfect, where I'm gonna write it, you write it down through the emotions, and Carly goes, I know what this is. I've seen this before. How do we do it?
Well, I was gonna say I kind of did that recently with a poem I wrote. Although now to think about it, I should have wrote it more as a short story because I could have added more details of like what the buildings look like or what the outside of, for example, Sala looks like. Because I wrote a poem about waiting to go inside this coffee shop slash wine place called Sala in Whittier, and I spoke about how I ran into an old church member who works at ISD across the street. Which, for those that don't know, ISD, I actually looked this up too recently. It's an internal service department, so they help out with a lot of things for the county, such as LA County, and including COVID tests. So that's why that old church member works there. I didn't say hi to him obviously because we've actually never officially met, but I know of him and he might know of me because we both went to a really messed up church that I left in 2014 and he left in 2020 because the global pastor was accused of drinking, and of course the global pastor said up and down no, he did not drink even though he is a drinker. But he, anyways, but yeah, again, I should have wrote more of that in details, and I feel like taking if I were to write that over again, I would have written that poem more as a short story. So I guess that's all I have to say on that.
Awesome. A great question, Matt. And I like what everyone has said thus far. That I remember, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Arizona, but Arizona is super hot, but the skyline is super beautiful. And that may be because there's not a whole lot of city out there, so the skyline is not obstructed. But I remember looking at a desert sky and I saw these two enormous clouds that were converging together to like form this big monster. And I felt like, again, like a little ant. And I'm looking at it and it is gorgeous. And I wanted to share it so bad with my wife. So I got my phone out and I took a picture and I, like Matthew, right? I look at the skyline, I look at the clouds, I look at the picture, and I'm like, it's just not going to work. She's going to have to be here. And it's difficult to translate an experience like that, especially one where you're so awestruck or you're filled with such joy. The person oftentimes has to be there. So that's one thing that it's the struggle to try and communicate that and to someone that is not having that same experience. Nevertheless, we want to. I remember one other thing really quickly. Also in Arizona, there was a Safeway, which I think is Vaughn's out there. So I went into the Safeway and there was a coin star there. And there's a lot of rich people in Scottsdale. I wasn't one of them. But when people put their change in these things, sometimes, like coins can fall through to the reservoir. And so I'm not trying to cheat or anything, but like I would look at the reservoir and I came up on like $1.50 like one time. And I'm like, this is super cool. And like laundry money, awesome. So I grabbed the change and no one was around. I didn't steal from anybody. No one was there. You just have to throw that in there intentionally. But you know what I noticed? Every time I went to that Safeway, I would always look there because I got like $1.50 paycheck once there. And I think we tend to look at the places that we find value in. And so for some of us, it's nature, which I love. I mean, I love history, but what's older than nature when you go outside? Like it's beautiful. Like my wife and I took some pictures of the sunrise, which of course involves getting up super early, but it was worth it once we got out there after coffee. It was like super awesome. So I think that this life is something to be cherished. And us just a quick note on memories because that was part of Matthew's question too, and I think Carly touched on this as well. She said memories can either help or they can harm. And I think while we all have memories, especially those from childhood, by which we draw these nostalgic images from first time to Disneyland, that sort of thing, but there's also memories that hurt really bad. and and I think the perspective is really important when we're looking back at our own history, that when we look at our lives, I think this is part of the failure of psychiatry and psychology, because they have the person generally look inward and backward instead of forward. And forward is the healthiest direction. And the etymology of even the word psychology, the root word suke, it means many things, right? As Greek words tend to mean many things. But the depth of that word speaks to the inner man. It actually speaks to the soul. So in order for someone to advise you properly, to counsel you about even that really hard thing that happened in your life, they have to know something about your soul, the inner man. And so that's why it's important for us to, yes, share those deep things, even those troubling things, but we want to share with someone that is trustworthy, that's not going to just have us looking inward or backward, but rather forward, and forward towards uh well, really towards God. I mean, he created the soul, right? So like he would be the best resource for that.
And isn't it so difficult to find people to trust? And even more so, how do we trust not only others but ourselves? It looks really bright, doesn't it? When we're writing things down. And the one something that I've certainly struggled with, and I'm sure all of us do, is when I'm writing something about something real, something important, and I have a motivation, I have an intent that matters to me, not just it's words that pop in my head. I'm gonna put them down there. It's something I feel like doing, in the moment. It's something that is it's very important, and I have to trust that what pops out of this pen matters. And maybe the last question might be a heavy question, and I think I've asked it before to others, but when you're writing, when you're creating, when you're getting into the moment, when you're maybe compiling all of your photos, because I'm sure, Carly, you've taken pictures and painted many, many things, and you look at it and you go, oh, not this one. Oh, no, 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 just never, never, never. How do we get through that moment and say, yes, this one. Or when we're writing a sentence, we're writing a line of poetry, we're writing a character, and they're about to say something that we know in our heart needs to be said. It's never been said before, we've never heard it, but it has to. How do we trust ourselves to let it happen?
I can get us started again. It's one thing that I'm finding as I become more experienced as an artist, is that different people like and hate different ones of my works, and it's a big spectrum. And so I try to keep that in mind and realize that just because I don't like something or one person doesn't like something, the next person that comes along will only like that one and not like the ones that we're fans of. And I try to, one thing that I think really helps with this is actually the internet and our ability to be here tonight together, our ability to look at other experts. And so I really try to follow and then follow the advice of a lot of people who I follow through Instagram or online classes or whatever, and look at how they do their work, look at how they study. And so I have one woman who always recommends you go to the old masters and sometimes just copy what they do and try to learn how they went about things. And then I think you get exposure to a lot more people, and a lot more ideas and a lot more values. So things that people value that you may not, or ideas that you haven't encountered before, to see that something great can come from something that wasn't maybe what you intended. And so the more exposure we have to each other and the more we appreciate each other's work and take time to interact, since art is about communication, really taking the time to appreciate that and listen, I think is a great way to have more confidence in yourself as well.
I agree.
Really good answer. What I'll share is that um, I've I've come across some people, no one here, but some people that really aren't talented in that particular field, even though it's their passion, and it becomes difficult to find a way to kind of express that. Like I remember, for example, it was an open mic night, and it was a musician, and this person could not play the guitar to save their life, and it was tough out there, but I respected the fact that this person wanted to share. So I think studying is important. And as Carly was describing, like, let's go back to, you know uh, those experts, right? Even when I'm about to get ready to share like a message, like in whether it's in a church or in a jail, I need to make sure that it's correct. I can't just go in there willy-nilly without having studied up. Like you have to be confident. And oftentimes what we do is it's called triangulation. So you have to look at several resources, good resources, and get into, like, for example, the original language, like Koine Greek and Biblical Hebrew, in order for you to be able to understand, hey, you're separated by thousands of years, by geography, by culture. How are you sure that what you're about to explain is correct? And you want to make sure it's correct. So, studying is very important, certainly, when you're going to share. And then being realistic. I may not be the best person to talk to about this particular subject, but do I know a guy that's better at that? Oh, please talk to him. The idea is I have to esteem everyone else as higher than myself. So that means I need to be willing to take criticism. I need to be willing to be mocked, ridiculed, excluded. I had a guy in a jail once on one particular occasion. He's like, "Hey, he was mocking me big time. He's like, "Hey, what you got for me today? Like, preacher man, like, hey, what you got right now, man? You got some Bible tracts and blah, 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 blah." But he was saying it in a very condescending way. So I responded back kindly, and I was like, "Well, we have this material, that." And he didn't take a thing from me. And I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe next time." I saw him the next time. I think it was a month later, and I was sharing with him, respectfully and kindly and lovingly. And this man broke down crying, talking to me. So I think it's being patient with people as well, and being and willing to even take their criticism. One, they may be right because we're not the best at anything, but we want to share because I think we care about other people. I think that's a good motivation.
Absolutely, and I think patience. I'm certainly finding I'm more patient, but but I'm more patient in areas and less patient where it really matters. I don't know if any of you are the same way, where maybe at work you're the most level-headed person. You deal with all these people who are uptight, they're angry, they're loud, and you're just like, oh hey, well, okay, no, I understand. Oh, that's fine. No, that's cool. That's a cool way of thinking. And yet with those around you, you just can't stand it, and it drives you upside down and sideways and so on. But patience, 100%. I believe with ourselves, and when we're creating work, being patient with us too very much matters. Patience in that I might be hurt during this line of poetry that I'm writing. I might be hurt at this image that I'm capturing, that I'm trying to paint, that I'm looking at in my head, and just sit there and hold on for a minute. Don't throw it away yet. Come back to it at another day after it's kind of marinated, it's calmed down, the mist has settled, and everything else. And we can capture and appreciate the message of what we were trying to get to. And so I'm going to end here. Not yet. A little bit. I gotta say a few words, and then also everybody. So Jesse, Carly, and Marcus. When I do end, we'll still be here on Zoom, so we can say goodbye. We can hang out. We can kind of debrief a little bit, relax, just like if it were in person. Everybody leaves, and we're sitting there before we say our goodbyes. But for everybody watching, of course, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We always appreciate it. Ghost Brian, Ghost Dennis, Ghost James. Haven't mentioned Ghost James yet. Ghost James, you'll see James soon. Especially with our new journal coming out, The Waiting Room. Again, submissions are open today. They are open year round. $0 submission fee, 100% forever. If you're confused, worried about, uncertain if what you have is acceptable, email us. Just say, hey, I have this idea. Can I send it in? Absolutely. You can send it to the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can email, of course. I answer the emails, ghosts@nervousghostpress.org. There's also a contact form at www.nervousghostpress.org. And when you do submit, it's all on the website. Everything we do is in the same place. Hold on, I put the wrong video up. Wait a minute. There we go. And it's open year round. It'll come out once a year. The publication date will change as the years go on. I think that's kind of cool, depending on how we're feeling, what's going on in the world. The biggest thing that I have noticed is that we're creating something. We are not bound by arbitrary deadlines. And if I need to move something, then I can move it. If we're gonna publish something tomorrow and Carly says, hey, I have some work I want to send you, but I'll send it to you in 3 days. Well then shoot, I'm gonna move it to 4 days, and we'll publish it then. But everybody, send in the work, say hello. Our next open mic will be in Whittier, California. If you're in the area, if not, come through. That is the venue. That's the city. I don't have the specific date yet, but we'll be announcing it. We'll let everybody know it's in person. We'll still be live streaming to YouTube, but if you want to speak, of course, you'll have to be there. If you're uncomfortable, we'll find a way. I'll figure it out. I'll always work with everybody. But show up. I'd be happy to meet everyone, and we can grow our community so much and be so much stronger together. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.